Today, I want to talk to you about 3 ways you can get more done in a week than your peers will in a month. Okay, so I want to introduce this book to you. First off, 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. It was written by Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and I had the chance to work with him during the release of this book. It just came out during his 6 weeks exponential growth, and I love it so much that 50 books are being delivered to my house tomorrow. So why I want to talk to you about this today is that I realize that a lot of these principles are things that not only I teach, but I have embodied for a long time. And so I want to talk to you about some of these strategies, because what I want you to do is be a top performer without working more or longer. In fact, if you do this right, you can work even less. And this goes against everything that the man, meaning corporate America, wants you to do, which is slave away from 8 to 5. But did you know that's like less than 20% of the day that you actually do anything that moves towards goals? That's not just for you, that's for everyone, okay? So I want to give you the very first way, which is you need to embrace what's called the Pareto principle. Now, I talk about this a lot, and when I learned this, it was just mind-boggling to me. So when I say that, 20% of the day is actually the majority of what will create 80% of your results. So the Pareto principle says, the 80-20 rule or 20-80 rule, however you want to do this, says that 20% of your effort creates 80% of your results. Okay, let me say that again. 20% of what you do creates 80% of your results. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, this concept came from an economist, Pareto, and he actually figured it out by measuring how pea plants were growing. He saw that his best producers produced 80% of his crops, but it was only 20% of all the total plants. And he looked at this and he actually was able to see and derive that this equation applies across everything. So I want you to embrace now, how do I get into the 20%? So your 20% is what you are going to focus on. And now this is where I say people can work literally at 20% and achieve 80% level of results. Okay, now that is working smarter and not harder. And as you get better and better at this, inside the concept of this book says, go deeper into your 20%. But we're going to start by just identifying your needle movers. That's what we're calling it. Okay, so let me give you an example. As a recruiter, one of the things I knew that if I had a goal, my main measure of success in my job was how many jobs I filled in a single month. Okay, so if I go back and extract the pathway to get there, I know what needs to happen is I need to have more candidates in my pipeline. So the driver for my 20%, which the byproduct of that is the hires, meant that I needed to set aside 2 hours of my day, the very first 2 hours of my day, because if you did 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's your 20%. If I did 2 hours a day of sourcing candidates, I would by default automatically achieve and exceed my goals like that. So I could spend 20% of my time focused on the major driver of my goals, and that would actually create the result for me. So that's your first thing, is first off, you need to get clear on what is the big outcome. What is that you need to do in order to be perceived as a high achiever? And that means in your job, or if you run a business like me, I know that creating content, hi, this is what I'm doing right now. This is the biggest driver in my business, okay? So content and coaching are my two main pillars in my business of what I'm responsible for. So that's ultimately how I know what I'm going to be focused on. So the first way is use the Pareto principle and identify your 20%. Now, the second way is time blocking. Okay, now there is a whole bunch of concepts, the ability to handle multiple deadlines or multitask. Now, it's important to be able to prioritize and understand what, first things first. That concept means that I need to do what's important and not necessarily what's urgent. Okay, now let me lean back on this a little bit. When I say that the 20% it needs to be focused, it needs to be what's important. And let me tell you, what's urgent usually isn't important. Okay, so your 20% needs to be important. So I know that email response is urgent, but you are always training people of how to respond. In fact, I turned off all my notifications when I worked in corporate America. I did not want to see the pings. I checked email twice a day. I put my out of office and said I would check email twice a day and I would get back to you between these times, because I wanted my time to be focused on what was important. Okay, so what is important is your first 2 hours. And the best, because that's your 20%. Okay. So you're identified what you're going to do during that 20%, hopefully. And now you need to time block. Your goal is to just get it done. Just get that task done and go deep, not pinging off emails, not doing things and busy work that feels important, but is really just urgent. I need you to identify the true needle movers and do important work in time blocks where you have at least 2 hours to focus with 0 distractions. Okay. So that is the second way, because if you can do that, if you did that, you would actually achieve more working 2 hours a day than most people will do in an entire week. That is how powerful this one concept is. Okay. Now, the next thing is the last idea, which it comes from the book Good to Great. And they say, it's Jim Collins, and he says, if you have more than 3 priorities a day, you have none. Okay. So you get 3 priorities a day. So your to-do list, if it's 100 items long, it's kind of called, my friend Alex Sharpton said, it's your to-die list. Your to-do list is a list of tasks, but your 3 main objectives for the day, that's what you're focused on. And guess what they need to be aligned to? That needle mover, that 20% that you're going to be doing, and it should be scheduled into your blocks of 20%. Now, I don't focus on 3 main priorities. I might focus on 1 priority per day. And I have 3 other objectives, like 1 meeting and this priority, and then something else. That's how I do it. But if you have more than 3, then you have everything. Basically, you have no priorities. And so if everything's on fire, guess what? That means nothing is on fire. And that reference really came true to me when I knew somebody who worked in HR, and they worked for a cruise line. And they said, literally the question, they were in HR and they would ask, and they said, is the boat on fire? Then nothing is urgent until the boat is on fire. And so our perception of what's urgent is usually somebody else's emergency based on poor planning. And while it might be urgent, it's not critical like a business or a boat being on fire. Okay. And so I want you to remember is that you need to set different level of expectations, train the people around you, protect your time and your attention, because you have such a finite resource there, and focus on your 20% and use 2 hours of the day to get your best work done. I swear you will get more done in this week than you ever have. Now, all that to being said, I want to let you know that I have an amazing resource. If you are not allowed to go in and lean into that 20% or use these principles where you can do your best work that's proven by science, it's not the place for you. So I want to invite you to learn how to write a 6-figure resume. Okay, so I have now taught over 20,000 people how to add 6 figures to their income in a single career move. But what I want you to know here is that it starts with your resume. So if you're looking to land your first or your next 6-figure job, this checklist is exactly what you need. It's totally free. Head to the comments, go grab it right now while you still can, and I will see you on the other side.